Is Terron Armstead going to retire this NFL offseason? The longtime Miami Dolphin has been a staple at left tackle for the Fins, but he may call it quits after this past season. I am Nick Roloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. But before we dive into everything surrounding Terron Armstead, we did unfortunately launch a New York Jets channel at Chat Sports. I am major bummed about it, but we are challenging them to a sub battle because if they are going to start a channel, I want to welcome them to the company with a loss. So hit that sub button because we're posting daily Miami Dolphins content. We'll be live later today. So hit that sub button. Let's bury the Jets. All right, let's get into Terron Armstead now because the Dolphins' offensive line has been the biggest struggle on this roster for a while now, but could losing Armstead potentially even take a bigger hit to that front five? Well, if you want to really dive into it, it is likely that he is going to retire. He is 33 years old, and he contemplated retirement last offseason. There was a legit chance that he wasn't even going to be on the roster this year. And when you think about if he is on the roster, it is a pretty big cap hit for the Miami Dolphins if he is playing left tackle in 2025. $22.8 million if he is on the roster. And he played pretty well last season, just allowed 3 sacks and was one of the highest graded PFF offensive tackles in all of football. So Armstead is someone still able to play at a high level despite the injuries, despite the age. He was absolutely the best offensive lineman for Miami. Was he the most durable? No. Robert Jones and Aaron Brewer, plus Liam Eichenberg, honestly, were a staple on that offensive line. Armstead was going in and out of the lineup, but he did play the majority of the season. He logged 821 snaps. And as I mentioned, he was one of the highest graded offensive tackles in all football. He was top 5 in almost every single grade from Pro Football Focus. Overall, pass block, run blocking. Only allowed 3 sacks and only gave up 3 penalties in 2024. Armstead arguably had the best season of his career in terms of being a Miami Dolphin since he was signed in 2022. But I need you to predict it for me. It's today's pinned comment. So if you get hit with a YouTube ad break, scroll down, let it play, and answer today's question. Will Terron Armstead retire this offseason? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I believe Terron Armstead will retire in this offseason. He has battled injuries. He has dealt with a lot of ups and downs in his career, but it makes a lot of sense that Armstead will ultimately call it quits in 2025 just because of his body breaking down. There was a quote this year where he literally said his knee could not go. He literally had no feeling in the middle of the game, and he was forced to come out. When a player starts to talk about how much his body is failing him, we've seen the elbow, we've seen the knee, we've seen the back. Armstead is an absolute warrior. He tries to play through everything, but it just makes sense for him to ultimately call it after a really, really good career because of how many injuries he has sustained, and the Dolphins already have his backup in place in Patrick Paul. But when you add to the rumors of him posting this quote on Instagram with a series of photos from the season, it really starts to make you think that he is ultimately going to retire. On Instagram, he posted year 12 in the books. I can't express how grateful I am for this game and all the opportunities, relationships, moments, and memories it has created. To every fan and supporter, I love and appreciate you. That's all for now. Stay tuned. That kind of sounds like someone that's going to retire, right? Like when you say, thank you to all the fans, thank you to all the supporters. Sure, maybe Armstead is just saying, well, thank you for being a supporter. Year 12 is in the books, like he said off the rip. But I'm reading into that a little bit as he is going to retire. And maybe you guys think differently, but I will say this as we talk about the contingency if Armstead retires. I don't think Miami can lose in this situation because he either retires and Miami saves cap space, or he stays on the football field and the Dolphins have left tackle locked in at a pretty high level for the 2025 season. And the reason why I say that he will create pretty good cap situation for Miami, well, if he tells the Dolphins he is going to retire, they can actually designate that retirement post-June 1st. That would save Miami $15 million in cap space for this upcoming season, and if he tells them that before free agency in early March, they can use that $15 million to go sign other free agents. So ideally, Armstead will let Miami know sooner rather than later if he plans to return in 2025, because That $15 million in cap space would be pretty helpful, especially when he has a $22.8 million cap hit if he's on the roster. And we're going to continue to talk about Terron Armstead here on today's show, but make sure you do get started with Game Time, the sponsor of today's episode of Dolphins Today. Game Time is the #1 ticketing app out there. If you want to go see a live event, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, Game Time is the best way to get your tickets. They have so many great features, one of them being Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. All-in pricing is another feature I love. It shows you the total price of your ticket up front rather than getting blindsided by fees at checkout. You could also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. So if you're going to a concert, well, you know your exact vantage point to the stage. If you're going to a game, you know where the court field is going to be. You're not going to be behind a pole or a board or anything like that. I use Game Time to buy all my tickets, including when I went to Christmas basketball with the parents against Timberwolves and Mavericks. So get started today. Download the app and use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only. But one more time, when you create an account, use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Shout to Game Time. What time is it? It is game time. We talked about having the financial aspect of it benefit Miami if he ultimately retires. Well, then you might say, well, then we'd have to figure out our left tackle. Well, actually, we do not, and I assume most of you know this, but the Dolphins drafted Patrick Paul in the second round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the offensive tackle out of Houston, and he would be the replacement. So I am not worried either way. And although Paul did not have a picture-perfect rookie season when he was on the field, he only played about 338 snaps, started about 3 or 4 games, and his PFF numbers weren't good. Remember, we showed you earlier, Terron Armstead allowed 3 sacks and only had 3 penalties, and he played 830-plus snaps, and his PFF grades were all in the 80s. Well, it's certainly not that for Paul, but you got to understand he is raw. He's a rookie. He's still developing the technique, the hand placement, the footwork. And as he continues to improve and get work with this coaching staff, I do expect him to improve. I knew it was not going to be a great first year for Paul, and he wasn't even projected and slated to really get a lot of PT for the Dolphins, right? You had Armstead and Austin Jackson as your 2 bookend tackles. You were just hoping Paul was going to learn behind them and then take over in 1 or 2 years, which that plan might be coming to fruition. And we'll talk more about my thoughts on Paul here, but I want to get your thoughts. Be honest for me. What is your confidence level in Patrick Paul if he is thrusted into being the starting left tackle in 2025? Scale it 1 to 10 for me. I'm actually feeling pretty solid. I'll give it a 7-1. I know that might be a little bit high, and you might say, did he have the best rookie season? And I'll say, no, he did not. But I still believe he will be good. There's a lot to like when it comes to Patrick Paul. His physicality, his size. He's a massive human being. And when you watch his tape, watch him on the offensive line, I've got one thing to say. He is an absolute mauler. Patrick Paul will not be So he will not be an offensive lineman that gets pushed around. Let's just say that. He is a physical guy. And when you watch some of his tape in the run game, sure, does he need to improve? Absolutely. But there are times where he just absolutely moves his opposing defensive lineman, his edge, off of his spot due to his strength and size. When you watch him in short yard situations, you only get excited about the long-term capability of Patrick Paul. And yes, I know, I'm going to say this for one last time today. Was his rookie year perfect? Was his rookie year even above average? No, it was not. And we've seen a lot of offensive tackles come in as a rookie and dominate. Paul was a developmental long-term pick from Chris Grier in the second round. And even though I am not the biggest fan of Chris Grier and would like him to be canned from the Miami Dolphins, I am still going to trust in the vision they saw with Paul. I liked him coming out of the draft myself. I had him relatively high on my big board. Would I have used that pick in the second round on Paul? No, I thought there was other positions to address, but since the pick was made, I think Paul is ultimately going to become good, and with what I've seen on tape, at least from a nice traits standpoint, I think he'll be fine. And when you look for 2025, you already have 3 offensive linemen in place, whether you have Armstead or not, right? You have your left tackle, center, and right tackle spot figured out. Austin Jackson, coming back from his knee injury, will be slotted in at right tackle. Aaron Brewer, who signed a 3-year deal last offseason, completed his first year in Miami, was actually very good, and has 2 years left on his contract. And then you either have Terron Armstead if he stays on the field, or Paul if he ultimately retires. So all you have to do if you are the Miami Dolphins this offseason to address this offensive line is figure out your 2 guard spots. Robert Jones was not adequate enough at left guard. Liam Eichenberg was not adequate at right guard. And although Isaiah Wynn got more playing time near the end of the season, I think he did not show enough for me to feel comfortable signing him to a cheaper 1-year deal to have him be your starter in 25. So make the investment, whether it's in the NFL draft, whether it's into a multi-year contract in NFL free agency. Make an investment into your left guard and right guard spot. Improve that interior offensive line, which will allow you to run the ball better in the red zone, inside the 10, inside the 5, up the middle, short yarded situations, and have this offensive line set going into next year with Jackson, Armstead / Paul, Aaron Brewer, and those 2 new offensive guards you have. Because if you improve your offensive line, your offense will be more consistent. You'll have a more balanced attack. Hey, and maybe you'll have a better offense that can lead you to the postseason in 25 after missing it in 2024. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we're dropping 2 videos on a daily basis. We'll also be live on this channel today, Tuesday afternoon, as we always are. So hit that sub button. Let's bury the Jets in our weekly sub battle, but also subscribe for daily Dolphins rumors.